adversity that's going to happen. There's always, you're going to solve one problem so that you can solve another one. And that's just the perpetual nature of life. When I look at the mentors that you've surrounded yourself with, you talk a lot about Artie Palermo as a big mentor in your life. What did he really provide to you personally, and how did he provide that mentorship? Welcome back to the Money, the Mindset Mentoring podcast. Today, we are going to talk about two of my favorite subjects. Well, number one, happiness, because I love being happy. Let's just face it. And number two, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Why? Because my bald-headed friend here, we are brothers from another mother, but we are also brothers in Jiu-Jitsu. So, Layton, man, thank you so much for joining us today, dude.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Looking forward to it.
So, on your shirt, it says your happiness equation. And it's so interesting to put those in a sentence, because when I think about happiness, I think about how I feel. When I think about an equation, I think about math. So let's look at the context of what it actually says on your shirt and how do we break that apart?
Yeah. So the first thing, it goes to what is the definition of happiness as it relates to, what I'm getting at in my book and the stuff that I do. And I really try and separate the emotion of happiness from what I'm referring to. What I'm referring to is a feeling of satisfaction and inner peace at the deepest level of yourself. That's what I'm encouraging people towards, giving them information and tools towards. So the feeling of happiness is very different than that, because that can be fleeting.
Yeah, and that's the difference between building a life, a legacy in your life versus eating a chocolate bar. A chocolate bar, you're going to feel pretty good. You're like, oh, that tastes so great. And then all of a sudden you get that sugar dump that you're like, oh, I feel terrible. And now you got to do the 1,500 burpees to make up for it. Whereas if you do that hard thing that you earn that right for happiness, that's what you talk about, is that longer lasting feeling that supersedes that moment. Is that sum it up 100%. A little bit?
Something we could relate this to is jujitsu. It is so hard. It is so humbling. Some of the most difficult emotions sometimes that I feel, which are all internal, I get while I'm on the mats or approaching the mats or coming off the mats. And while it's very hard, I have built amazing relationships of people who I trust, like my brother, like my sister, and to get this amazing feeling of happiness that it constantly produces for myself and others, it took a lot to get where I am. It takes a lot to maintain it. I can't rest on my laurels. I mean, there's everything that relates to happiness can be broken down into these different things that we experience in life, jiu-jitsu being one, business being another, building a family being a third, and you can just keep listing them, but they have these common patterns that repeat in all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that brings me to somebody like Les Brown. Les Brown says, very well, he says, if you do things in life that are easy, your life is going to be hard. If you do things in life that are hard, your life is going to be easy. And jiu-jitsu certainly is one of those things where it's 4:45 in the morning and you're looking at that clock going, I could probably hit the snooze. But you don't. You get up and you go train, or if you do it at night, whatever time frame you choose. But you're going in, and you're not going in to go crush Cheetos on the couch. You're going in there to be humbled by somebody who's gonna put you in a position. Now, you sometimes luckily can be the humbler,
This is true.
which
keeps you coming back.
Yeah, it keeps you coming back because those fresh new bluebells just make you feel good, and so it's a good thing. But the idea is you're going there now. The happiness that comes out of that comes from many different reasons. And I know when we talk about happiness, the one thing that I've been talking to everybody about your book and talking to everybody about our conversation, because I think it's such a paradigm in the way that you look at happiness, because I think most people get it wrong because they focus on the outcome, that emotion. They focus on that feeling where you take a totally different paradigm shift. You look at happiness very differently. So I want to kind of really hone in on that and focus on the definition of the difference between the feeling of happiness and the pattern for success for happiness.
Yeah. So chasing the feeling is problematic for a number of reasons. The first thing is that feelings are fleeting. You have them one moment and they're gone the next. And this is also very apparent with high-level athletes, business people from all walks of life, where they're setting out to reach this goal that is going to make them in their mind, and it's kind of unspoken, but it's like subliminal with all the people they interact with and probably themselves, is once I get this gold medal, once I become the world champion, once I'm on the Forbes bestsellers, Forbes business list, I'm going to be happy. And then they get there, and then a lot of them are unhappy because that feeling that they thought they were going to have is not there. And they kind of have missed the point, because the point isn't necessarily the outcome, like you mentioned. It's the journey. It's the growth in yourself and getting joy from that. It's the relationships that you develop along the way with your coaches, with your teammates, with the people who you inspire. Like, that is where where the good stuff comes from. The award at the end is important. It's great to have goals, and I encourage people to have goals. But if you're just solely focused on that goal, you're really missing the bigger picture.
So it's the iceberg sort of mentality of most people look at what's above the water, not what's below it. And the work that you put in with your teammates, the early mornings, the blood, the sweat, the tears that you put in with them to be able to go in and, like Mike Tyson knocked somebody out in 37 seconds. It's not the 37 seconds that matter. It's all the work that you put in before. And if you start structuring your reaction to the emotions, to the work up front, rather than to the outcome of the work at the end, what you're saying is that's going to provide more sustainability.
100%. And there's a big tie-in to gratitude as well too. And first of all, letting people be aware that they should be more intentional with their gratitude, because I think if you're going on any of these epic journeys or even the regular journeys of life, and you can have a gratitude mindset in the process, these little things are not going to really get past your filter. You're going to be like, wow, I'm so thankful that I live in a place where I can even pursue my dreams and my goals without an oppressive government stopping me from doing that, or that I have family, that I have friends, that I have a coach, that I have mentors. Like, there's infinite, like, literally, well, I don't know, literally, I have to be careful when I say that word, but there are many, many, many blessings. Like, they're countless. They're definitely countless when you take time to really think about all the stuff that has put you in a position to even attempt any of this stuff.
Well, and blessings come in many different ways. I know it was about this time last year, I blew my knee out at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I was in X guard, elevated, and my knee popped. Now, we could say it was from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or we could say it from the many years of rugby and all the other stuff I put my body through, but whatever it is, or we'll put the age work out there, but I think age is a number. At least I believe that.
I agree.
But the idea is I could have looked at that moment of when I blew my knee out as a problem, but what it did is it created a moment in which I actually doubled down on my business, on one of our businesses, and it blew up that year. And if I maybe didn't have that moment where I needed to take a little throttling back on jiu-jitsu that year so that I could repurpose that time towards the business, I might not have seen the same level of success in the business if it wasn't for that injury. So if I would have focused just only on the outcome of trying to hit the target of going to Masters Worlds last year, because that's really what I wanted to do, but instead I wanted to succeed in some way, and that doesn't matter what came in front of me, is that I still found success in the way that I needed to find success for myself.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the things I talk about in the book is finding the blessing in every tragedy. And for my life, I can only speak to my life, and I've spoken to many people who've had much harder lives than I have, and a lot of them agree with this, is like, in almost every tragedy, you can find a positive that comes out of it. You talk about your knee issue and took you off the sidelines for a minute, but you were able to refocus your efforts to get something else going, and that was like a really great thing. And then you came back to jiu-jitsu, and now you got both of them. One of the examples I use in my book and from my life is the divorce I had. Like, it was really tough, especially being separated from my children. I went from 100% access to them to 50% access. And I realized after thinking and getting, myself together, is like, if I'm only going to have them 50% of the time, I'm going to make this 50% count. So I kind of doubled down on my impact that I was trying to have with my children. So that encouraged me to do like epic cross-country road trips with them, and we've had some amazing adventures, and we have memories that we still talk about to this day from many, many years ago. And you talk about, when we started the podcast, we're talking about putting in the hard work. So that way you get it produces or has the capacity to produce happiness in your life. Some of those road trips that I took, and I wasn't remarried at the time, it was just myself and 3 very young kids. And we went literally, one of them was from Miami to Washington State, just Northern California. And a lot of work to do that, but it still is producing happiness in my life. So that's an example.
Yeah. Yeah, you took basically something which was, I'm going to minimize the amount of time to say I'm going to maximize the return on the time in which I'm spending, which I think is a great way to turn something that could be viewed as a catastrophe into an opportunity. And I think what you really do very well in the book is really start to hone in on the idea that happiness, it's not a mystery. I think the book actually says in a quote, happiness isn't a mystery. It's a system built on 7 key pillars. And happiness as a system, I think, is when we look at paradigm, I think that's something that's really interesting. So I want to dive into the 7 pillars and really start to kind of flush those out, because I think as you label them and just bullet point them, smash out the 7 pillars so that people can really hear this. So I think if you're listening, guys, and you're wondering, I'm working 24/7, or I'm not spending enough time doing the things that I love, or I'm successful, but I'm not feeling the success. This is something that is going to really help you hone in on really finding the happiness in what you're doing. So let's throw out those 7 pillars.
All right. So there's 7 questions to get your happiness score. Very first one is, are your basic human needs being met? Yes or no question. Second one is, do you belong to any groups that are meaningful to you and meet regularly? Again, yes or no question. Third one is, on an A+ to F scale, how would you rate the value that you bring to those groups? That's the third one. The fourth one is, on an A+ to F scale, how would you rate your gratitude? The fifth one is, when a meaningful situation doesn't go as expected, negative impact on your emotions lasts, and then you have 3 options: short time, moderate time, long time. The sixth one is, do you believe your life has a purpose? And then the 7th and final one is, on an A+ to F scale, how would you rate your progress to achieving your purpose in life? And those are the questions.
Those are such power. It gives me chills just listening to the questions, because I think it's so powerful, because what it's really doing is applying a scientific methodology to something that a lot of people look as a mystery box. And I think, for me, I mean, a lot of times I tell people Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is my therapy. And it's not because I'm a violent person and I want to go choke people. I really do love choking people, but I love choking my friends. And because then it's an I gotcha moment. And that I look at the happiness scale, I'm like, how many of those things in those 7 questions that you just proposed, just that one element of going to jiu-jitsu give me? And I could probably tick off a good 5 or 6 of them being answered just by that one task. So then you have to ask yourself in your life, what is the one task that you've got in your life that you're doing that can tick off a bunch of those things that you're moving towards, your purpose in life? You're surrounded with people that you think you're bringing value to, that they're bringing value to you, that your basic, needs are being met, like physicality. I need to be physical. That's a basic need. And so I think those, now knee injuries and back injuries aside, those are not basic needs, but those are just things that come with the territory.
Mental toughness is a pretty important need, and you learn to work through things. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I guess that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, in terms of jiu-jitsu for me and the 7 questions. And I was like, basic needs, yes. Group belonging, yes. Group value, yes. Gratitude, yes. Expectations, for sure. But then I got to purpose. I was like, man, I'm not really sure. And then I started thinking about it like I feel my purpose in life is to be a good husband and father. It's pretty basic. It's nothing like earth-shattering, but it really resonates with me. And what jiu-jitsu has given me, and I talk about this in the book, it's given me an opportunity to demonstrate to my kids that the things I want you to do, I do myself. I treat people with respect. I push through adversity. I do the things I say I'm going to do. And it's like a tangible way of demonstrating that to them. Even in my purpose, it's not like a very direct correlation, but when you think through it, it is definitely connected.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at right now from an audience standpoint, when I'm looking at your book, and I think it's unilaterally applicable to anybody in any environment, but there's one group in particular that I look at that especially when they're going through a transition that I think it really applies to. And specifically, I'm talking about people in the military and people who are first responders. And because they can have some of those quadrants really satisfied while they're in doing the things that they're doing. But when they transition out, so they leave the military or they leave being a police officer or a paramedic, it's when they transition out that they really find themselves lost. And how can you see somebody in that space being able to transition from that point of being lost to being able to reconcile to find happiness?
So I've thought of this. It's not necessarily in the book, but I have thought of this because I train with a lot of first responders, military, former military, and so on. And my analysis is when you're in any of those organizations, you're going through really difficult things, possibly the most difficult things that humans can go through. And you are relying on the people to your left and your right to get home safely, to help them get home safely. So you're developing these bonds with people. And I have seen people in these communities, when they interact with each other, there's a high level of integrity between each other. So you go from a world where that is your world. These are the people you're surrounded with. And there's just like an expectation of excellence to a degree. Maybe it's not spoken, but that's kind of like the underlying current there. And then you just go into the regular world where none of that naturally exists. So I think the message possibly there, I'm saying this very humbly, is to try and recreate that as much as you can. Because if you can find an endeavor in the civilian world that is very challenging in a positive direction, and you're going to have to go through that with other people that are going to help you and you're going to help them get through that, I think that can potentially fill that void that is created when you separate yourself from organizations like that. And there's millions of ways to do that, and there are millions of things, and we've talked about some of them here. Building a business is one, and if you connect with business people that are a similar stage or ahead of you that can mentor you, and you're really going through that process and you guys are doing that together, guys and girls are doing that together, I think that can be huge. Any athletic thing like jujitsu, but there are many other things that you can do as well too, and you really get tied into that and tied into a community, I think a lot of those needs are going to be addressed.
And that's where I find retirement is such a conundrum. Because when I look at retirement, the idea that we're just going to go from hyper vigilant, hyper focused, really results driven to now I'm just going to sit down on the couch and watch Golden Girls. It to me, I've never been excited around that idea around a retirement. I can't even put that into my head. And it's not that I'm a person of, what do they call, like a workaholic or whatever. It's just, I always feel that I feel the best when I have purpose. And that's what I really, when I read your book, I was like, my God, this speaks to me because it's in my DNA of that purpose drives happiness and purpose, whether it's in a group orientation, which I think is the highest level of purpose because you're getting that sort of holistic value of the success that brought together by people coming together. But you're also getting that purpose on that individual level because you're achieving things, and through doing hard things, you become better, and that creates a sustainability. And that's why I thought it was so interesting, because I think if you're somebody who is looking at retiring, this book helps you figure out, oh crap, I can't just sit on the couch, watch Golden Girls and realize I'm going to be happy. I have to find another mechanism for purpose in my life.
100%. And there are a million of them. But one of the themes in the book, as you know, is there are no finish lines in life. So your relationships, there's nothing that you can do for your spouse as a one-time gesture that is going to set you up for the perfect relationship for the rest of life. It's an ongoing process. Same thing with your kids. Nothing you can do one time set them up perfectly. And you look at all the important things in your life, they have this common pattern. They require effort, vigilance, awareness to maintain and to optimize them, And the same thing is true for me. Personally, I don't believe in retirement. Now, when I get much older, I'm probably not going to be doing the same things I'm doing, maybe not at the same intensity, but I'm going to have a purpose. I have a purpose. I'm just going to be continuing it out in a different way. That could be me still in my business, and maybe I'm helping my children who are now in business, or maybe they're in their own business and I'm just helping fill that need. But you've accumulated all this wisdom and knowledge and understanding of life. And to just not share that or not use that is just, man, it's such a huge pool of resources that is really untapped. And I personally am not going to do that. If God gives me life and health, I'm going to make sure that I'm pouring it out to my last day.
Well, I think that brings on the idea of the importance of mentors, because when you go through the process of all of this doing hard things, what you're really doing is you're the shoulders. You're doing that you either did the hard things by yourself and did the hard path, or you did the hard things with the assistance of others, which is on the shoulders of giants. And if you're at that moment that you've done those hard things and you can share that with somebody so that they can get the hall pass to the front and not have to go through the adversity, because whether they get the hall pass to the front of the line and they don't have to go through the early entry adversity, they're going to find the mid and the late entry adversity that's going to happen. There's always, you're going to solve one problem so that you can solve another one. And that's just the perpetual nature of life. When I look at the mentors that you've surrounded yourself with, you talk a lot about Artie Palermo as a big mentor in your life. What did he really provide to you personally, and how did he provide that mentorship?
So Artie is a person who operates from a position of abundance, which is something that I'm working on. I'm not there yet, but seeing his example really has kind of moved me along. He does not understand the concept of scarcity, and just the way that he operates his life and just being as giving as he has received so much and has been blessed so much in his business and his life and the outpouring of love that he's received, which has come about because of the way that he is. He is a great example in that area. But then beyond that is just like the tactical things of business. I'm in this situation. I'm trying to get a commercial building. Like, how do I do it? He's been there. He's done it himself. He's helped many people do it. And he just has an answer for almost anything. So he's a person I can ask. He always has an answer, and he always has my best intentions at hand. And it's hard to really duplicate that.
Yeah, I think he was quoted once saying, guiding someone to financial clarity is guiding them to personal freedom. And the two words that I take out of that sentence is clarity is freedom. And I think that's so crystal clear. And when I look at what you're doing, when you're talking about happiness, you're taking the idea around the emotion of happiness, which is muddied waters, because it's something that we can't really, it's not tangible, but you turn that into something that has clarity by giving it an equation and by giving it a system and model for success.
Yeah.
I think that really ties also into the way that for jujitsu, really. I mean, when you look at jujitsu, the jujitsu is such a beautiful thing because, fighting is in our DNA, it's in our human condition, but to translate that into a structure and then see what a structured combat looks like, which is jujitsu or MMA or anything, taekwondo, it doesn't really matter what the discipline is. The discipline comes through the structure. And I think breaking happiness down into a structure is I still say it, it's revolutionary. I've been talking about it to everybody.
It's interesting because in the book, when I'm talking about finding purpose in life and giving people ideas, if you're not sure what your purpose in life is, here are some tools and ideas that you can kind of work through to maybe arrive at that point. But one of the concepts is bringing order to chaos. And I never thought that this happiness formula and the equation kind of brings order to chaos. Now, I don't think I have solved happiness. I'm not making that claim. I feel I've contributed an important piece of the puzzle, and there's still a lot of pieces left, and a lot of other people have contributed to it already. But I think that my work in my book is going to speak to a certain type of person who the light bulb goes on for them. It's not going to go on for everybody, but a certain type of person is really going to resonate with them. And it's going to take that amorphous, chaotic concept of happiness and put some structure to it so that they can go through steps and become a happier person.
Yeah, I think that you're working really around the idea that you give a man a fish he'll eat for one day. You teach them how to fish, they'll eat for a lifetime. And so the idea of giving a framework rather than, teaching somebody just what happiness is, I think that's almost, to me, more important, because they can also personify it. Like it's not prescriptive enough to say that this is a mechanical process. It's really very much a principles-based approach to happiness and saying, these are the principles. Look, if you sum it up real quick, it's a system, it's a model, it's a framework for success, and find in your life where these frameworks exist and fix them.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's that pattern in everything, you take something like jujitsu, it's like, where do you even begin? It's so overwhelming to step on the mats as a white belt, never having grappled or never having done anything. And now you have to figure out how to submit someone else and prevent them from submitting you. Like, you talk about chaos.
The spazzy white belt shows up.
Exactly. And you have two of them together and then you watch it. That's probably the ultimate form of chaos. But
yeah. We never do that actually at our gym. We never put two spazzy white belts together because we know one of them's going to get injured.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people actually, it's funny because a lot of people avoid the spazzy white belt. They're like, no, you can't roll the spazzy white belt before they, get some content, get some training. I'm like, no. You've got to roll with the spazzy white belt. And I love it. I love rolling. Give me spazzy, give me freak out. And I love it because it's like the way that their eyes open up at the end and that they realize how much systems and models matter. It's not how big they are, strong they are, how young they are, fast they are, how much endurance they have. It's a system and model for success is what's going to win in life and what's going to win in jiu-jitsu. And when they come at the end and they're like, what kind of voodoo magic did you just work on me, you old man? And it's great. I love that. Giving that to me all day long. I mean, yes, it's a couple elbows in the face and a couple just maybe other parts of your body that hurt afterwards. But the moment and when you see that they realize it works, it's just magic.
Yeah. Yeah. That happens all the time. I mean, I'm 46. One of the older guys in my academy, we get a ton of young guys that come through, a lot of them wrestlers, which they do give me a handful at times. But, I have these guys who are bigger, stronger, younger than me, and I can just see their look in their eye. They're like, there's no way you're going to be able to do anything with me. And I just basically have my way with them for a round. And then at the end, like you say, you see that look on their face. It's like, wow, this really works. Like I thought I was going to be able to muscle my way through you, and you just took everything I did and used it against me. It's a great feeling. And then you start to see like their mind like breaking down, like they're lowering their barriers so that they can be taught, because I feel if and it would be true, if they could go in and just strength and spaz their way into like beating high level people, then clearly that works and keep doing that. But when you realize that's not the answer, then now you have to, well, this is clearly not working. They're doing something that is. How can I learn that? Like life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that to me, it's the purest thing about a pugilistic or grappling environment is that somebody's going to win and something's going to work. And you could have all the, kata and all the, the voodoo stuff that works. Like I think McDojo Life does a great job on
Awesome.
YouTube of really breaking that stuff down. I love that guy. And it's like, no, just put it to the test, put it to the fire. And what I suggest is with somebody who's looking at these 7 questions, put it to the test. Like ask yourself really deeply these questions and say, does this actually resonate with you? And if it does it actually identify somewhere where you've got to focus? Because if it does, then this process actually works. If it's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo where it's just, it's 7 cool things that somebody looked up on Instagram that sounds cool, but doesn't really do anything in your life, then yeah, it's probably not for you. But I can challenge you that I would say that the idea of taking happiness and making a system and a model for success rather than an emotive moment, you're going to find so much more sustainable outcomes than the person who's just chasing that fleeting.
Yeah, I agree. It's it gives people a place to start. A lot of people will say, I want to be happier. I want my life to be more fulfilling, but they don't know where to start. There's so much information. We don't have the issue right now of there not being information. We have the opposite issue of there being too much information and people not knowing where to start. Even in the ideas in the realm of happiness, it's like there's a lot of books out there, and I'm sure some do, but maybe the title in and of itself doesn't draw you into, okay, well, here's a really basic starting point. And for me, and in my book and on my website, people can go there for free, no credit card, no email, and they can get their score. You answer 7 questions and you get your score. I tried to make the barriers for entry as absolutely low as possible to get as many people as possible to start interacting with this content and hopefully making, an impact in their life.
Yeah, and I think that's so impressive to give that as a gift to people to be able to. And I challenge people to go out and take a look at your happiness equation, look it up, and try get your score, see how you do, and see where you need to focus on. I think it's one of the things. I think there's another guy in your life. His name's John Zengraf, and he said very eloquently, he said, a mentor's role is to challenge you to think differently and inspire you to reach beyond your comfort zone. And the words that I pull out of that is challenge and comfort zone, because I think most people love comfort. Whereas if you really want to grow, you have to love discomfort. And I think that's something where going out there and challenging yourself just to ask 7 basic questions, while it seems like a very low ask, I think it's actually something that can produce a massive outcome.
Yeah, they're short sentences and they're levels to how deep you can go. We did street interviews with people on our book tour where we just pulled people walking in various campuses throughout the US and we asked them questions. Now, some people you could tell didn't think very deeply and just kind of rattle off the first thing in their head. Some people they thought very deeply about it. And then I've also had one-on-one conversations with people, not on camera, where we're talking about these and we're going to the deepest level possible. This is very, do you believe your life has a purpose? I mean, that could be the deepest question that there is, and if you really sit down and think about it, you can go pretty deep with that. So yeah, it's, there are definitely levels to it.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, if somebody can, I think the idea about being challenged, I think there's things that people need in their life. And I think there's 3 people that anybody needs in life. Number 1, you need a role model. If you're going somewhere, you got to see who's done it before and how do I do that? Now, whether it's you're trying to figure out how to build a colony on Mars, or whether you're trying to figure out how do I redo my kitchen, you still should look for a role model. And maybe somebody hasn't built a colony on Mars, but they've built a colony somewhere, or they've done something that is of that magnitude. They've cut paths that are different. So you need a role model. The second person you need is a mentor. And a mentor is that person who, while they might not have a direct one-on-one relationship with you, it could be like somebody like John Maxwell. You just read their book and that gave you some feeling, or, they went through the happiness equation. They said, that's a role model, or so that's a mentor for how to understand happiness. That's the next thing. The next one is a coach, is somebody who's there to keep you accountable in the discipline of doing the daily things. Because if you don't have somebody who keeps you in discipline, no matter how much mentoring you have, no matter how much you can look at a role model, it's in the execution. Because I think most people love learning new things, but they lose it in the execution of doing the new thing.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I love about John Zengraf, my business coach that you mentioned, is that we meet monthly. And one of the things that we do is we set goals, and then we also look at the goals that we set. And we see, well, how did you do? And with some of the goals that are there, is we don't look at it as achieved or not, which is something that a lot of entrepreneurs do. Did I get it? Did I not get it? What we do is we give a % accomplished to that goal, because sometimes, you getting 90% of something, it may not be the 100% that you wanted, but to take that as a complete failure, which entrepreneurs tend to do, either I got it or didn't get it, but you actually got 90% there. Like, you really need to reframe the way you think about that. And he's helped me in that process. So there's that. And he has this analogy of when pilots are flying planes, they have to course correct, because I'm guessing the elements or the mechanics involved with flight will take a plane off path, and you constantly have to course correct so that way you get to your intended destination. And that's some of the things we do on a monthly basis. We course correct to make sure we're heading on the right path. And there's, definitely a lot of value in that.
Yeah, and I think that the 2 things that I think that are really important to take out of that is the idea, number 1, is that having that status bar rather than the binary element of did I hit or did I not hit, allows you to celebrate the wins when the win isn't 100% true, but it's getting towards the goal. Because there's some people who say success is a journey, and then there's some people say, if standards are what I set, or not what I set, but what I accept. So you can either say success is a journey, or you can say standards or what I accept, not what I set. But what you're doing is by having a status bar, you're being able to accomplish both of those things in the same task. You're able to say, here's my standards, and here's how I'm going to celebrate the successes as I approach to my standard. Because the one thing I might not have got wrong was just the timing of when the success happened. I might have thought that I'm going to hit the success, but maybe it's 6 months, not 3 months. Well, I still had the success. It just took a little bit longer to get there. And for me, I got my purple belt. It took me 10 years to get my purple belt. Some people could get their black belt in 5 or 8 years. It took me 10. And I joke about it. I'm like, maybe I just spent too much time in half guard. I don't know. But, as soon as I started doing X guard, all of a sudden the purple belt showed up, I guess. I don't know. But the idea is it's not necessarily the journey of getting to the purple belt. It's not necessarily the getting of the purple belt. It's actually the combination of the both and the skills that are developed in the process of getting there. And that's just like, again, as people say, it's just a piece of cloth around your waist. It doesn't really matter. It's what did you learn in the process, so that if everything was taken away, if I lost that belt and went into the laundry, couldn't find it, it doesn't mean I lost everything. It means that I still have the skills to be able to earn it a second time.
Yeah. And who did you become in the process of getting your purple belt? You're a different person. You're arguably a better person in certain respects in that process. And it would be the same thing in a lot of areas of life, not just jujitsu. The good thing about jujitsu, though, and I've been thinking about this, is it kind of gives structure to accomplishment. And while belts they don't really mean a whole lot, because you have some lower belts that can beat higher belts, and that can kind of get weird. But what it does is it gives you checkpoints on a road to a really large accomplishment. And it's like, when I become a black belt, I'm not going to be the best jiu-jitsu person in the world, but compared to where I started and the person that I've become in the process, I've achieved that level for myself. And that's ultimately kind of what it's about. It's people need wins. And that's another thing I've been thinking about, is people need wins. So like when I go out and work out in the gym in the morning, I was talking to my son about this yesterday. I had something bad that kind of happened, like business wise. We figured it out, it wasn't a big deal, but I was like, let me think of how my day went this morning. And I was like, well, I got you guys up on time. I got you to school. Those are both wins. I went and I had a really good workout. That's a win. And then I had this business thing happen. That was kind of an L. But I had 4 wins prior to that one. And I know I got a bunch more to go. He was like, yeah, Dad, that was actually pretty cool. So we need these small wins in life to help us keep going and keep coming back for more. Because without it, life gets overwhelming.
Absolutely. And that's why I look at, number one, you've got to understand motivation and what's motivating you to do things. Then you have to have that framework, that equation for success, to create the discipline in your life to do it. But then you have to have that willpower to sustain that discipline. And that willpower is being fed through the celebration of the wins, no matter how big or small, because right around the corner is another big L that's about to come around. And it's just going to happen. It's right there, and it's going to run into you, and you're going to have to address it. And if you don't celebrate those wins, that L is going to see so big. But if you celebrate somebody said to me the other day, they said to me, Steve, like, how do you handle this problem that you're dealing with right now? I'm like, it's one of 20 problems that I'm going to have this month. Like it's so small in comparison, because I have so many other ones, and that's just this month. Because if you get used to the idea that you're always making decisions actively, not passively, that means you're always in the chance of making a good decision or making a bad decision. You just got to get used to making a decision, and the outcome is the outcome.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's so many things that we need to decide on to get caught up in. Is this the perfect thing to do? Does this address it, 100%? Is the outcome going to be perfect? Like, I really try not to do that, because you get into the whole analysis paralysis thing, and then things pass you by. You need to make a decision. You didn't make the right one. It's just, you got to do the best with the information that you have good intentions, and then you decide, you move forward, and then whatever happens, you deal with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the one thing that I would say, you're working on the happiness equation. I'm working on the action equation, which is, I really am trying to figure out the idea around how to take somebody from the position of inaction to get them into action. And what is that moment that kind of gets them to, no, I've got to do this and I'm going to start now. Because again, like I said many times on the show, is there's so many people who go out there and they listen to all of these things that they want to learn about, and they become addicted to the process of learning, but they don't get addicted to the process of doing with the stuff that they're learning. And I think that does a disservice to them and to the person who's trying to help them grow, is that they have to get into that process of actually getting into action. So if you're going to give advice to somebody on the idea of they're sitting in a moment of inaction on whatever it is that they're looking at doing, and we want to get them into the moment of action, what is the thing that's going to help them get there?
A couple thoughts on that. One thing is that in my book, when I'm talking about group belonging, and I tell the reader, if you don't belong to any groups, you have no family, you have no groups, you just go to work, you come home, and that's the extent of your life. I tell them, put the book down. Don't read anything else. What you've learned so far is enough. Go out and find people to connect with. So that is something that I learned in my life, is like you said, you collect all these nuggets, and we have these safes full of nuggets and ideas, but we don't implement them. In that moment, I was trying to help my reader, because that's a really big thing, to not have those connections, help them, push them into action. And I'm telling you, as the author of the book, stop reading my book and go and do that. And when you've done that, then come back. But this is the most important thing right now. So that's one thing. The other thing that's really important in my life is schedule. I didn't actively start working out. So I was a high school track athlete, went to college. I basically didn't really do anything active for a very long time. I think probably maybe mid to late 30s, I started being active again. And what I realized was that the hardest part about going to the gym, and at that point I was just lifting, I wasn't doing anything with jujitsu or anything. The hardest part about going to the gym is going to the gym, not being at the gym and not coming back from the gym. I always found that once I was there, I just got it done. And then when I left, I always feel great. But the worst thing was that mental battle that I had with myself of, man, am I going to get off the couch and go to the gym? Am I going to wake up early and do this? It's like, and I realized I was torturing myself, and you're torturing yourself if you do it like that. So what I decided to do was, I was not going to make the decision of if I'm going to go to the gym in the moment that I was supposed to go. I would make it beforehand. So basically, I set a schedule, and I kept to my schedule, and there's no negotiating. So when it's time to go to the gym, I go to the gym. I don't go to the gym because I want to get stronger. I don't go to the gym because I want a better physique or any of this. I go to the gym because it's time to go to the gym. And the same thing for jiu-jitsu. I have everything that's really important in my life is on a schedule. I go to the gym still, and I go to jiu-jitsu, and my professor knows these are the days Layton is here. And if for whatever reason, because I have to travel or whatever, and I'm not there, he knows that there's something that happened, and he'll reach out to me. But a lot of times I'll communicate beforehand. But my schedule has become so ingrained in my life that everyone in my life knows what my schedule is, and they all know where to find me because I'm at the same places at the same times. And it just completely relieves that mental torture that I was putting myself through, and has made life a lot easier. And I've gotten a lot of results because these incremental days of working in anything, they produce a cumulative huge effect.
Yeah, that is so profound, because I think a lot of times people, they get, there's a time to make a decision and there's a time to follow a system. And if you want success, follow a system. Reduce the amount of times. Like, I think Steve Jobs was the one who said, I'm just going to keep on wearing the same clothes. So that's one smaller decision I never have to make again. I'm just going to get up. This is what I put on. And that's it. All my wardrobe's the same. I got 50 black turtlenecks, and that's what we're rocking. Now, whether your black turtleneck is the thing that you need to rock, that's a personal choice. But, that's the thing. Like, I know for me, I don't choose what I wear. I have it laid out. I grab it and I go. And I know, like, when it's time for jiu-jitsu at 4:45 in the morning, my bag is sitting out in the hallway ready to go. My toothbrush is sitting there. My, hairbrush is nowhere because I don't have any hair. And so I just go, and it makes it easier. And I think a lot of times people complicate systems so that they can make it so that they actually don't get into action, because they actually aren't following a system. They're following a decision. So I think to find success into actually getting into action, set up a system and become a servant to the system, and the system will set you free. And the chaos of always having a decision is what's going to keep you contained.
I 100% agree. I got that whole schedule idea from an internship I did while I was in college. I sold books door to door for the Southwestern Company. Completely changed my life, learned so many things. You talk about going through hard things with people and developing bonds and relationships. I know a lot of these guys and girls many years later, but yeah, they said your schedule is the most important thing. You're up at a certain time, you're at your first door at a certain time, you don't stop until a certain time, and you just don't negotiate with yourself, you just do it. And when I was kind of battling with myself with that whole gym thing, I was like, what do I have in my life? What do I have in my toolbox that I can, employ here? So let me take the schedule thing. It worked before, and I was able to do extremely well in that program. Let's see if it works here. And it for sure does.
I love it. Non-negotiables in your schedule. Build those in, make the choice once and implement, and that implementation will set you free. And whether it's in success in your business or success with happiness, I think having that system is what's so important. Have that equation. And Layton, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast, talking about your happiness equation. To me, I think it's instrumental for anybody who's looking to find a system for success and not just a fleeting moment. It's been an awesome conversation. Look forward to seeing you down and going for a roll.
Can't wait.
And we'll share some happiness that way together.
Awesome, man. Thank you, Steve. Really appreciate the opportunity, and I really look forward to rolling together.
Dude, man, let's make it happen. Guys, this is the money. This is the mindset. This is the mentoring podcast. Get your happiness equation. Go out there and do it with Leighton Campbell. We'll see you guys.